SEC media poll results came out, and they had Texas number 1, not by a wide margin, but they did get the majority of first place votes, followed by Georgia with number 2. And actually, I'm just going to throw this there up on the screen because I do have the file, and I'll throw that up there in 1 second. But I just wanted to talk about it because I think it is interesting, and where the SEC media as a whole thought this would go. So there it is. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Auburn, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Kentucky, and then of course Mississippi State ending there. Gerald, what are your thoughts as a whole? Do you think they got it right with Texas in particularly?
Man, it's close. Like, I feel like if Texas had a wider margin over Georgia, I would feel a lot differently about it. But I think Texas and Georgia effectively being neck and neck. Like, a couple of people flip Texas and Georgia on their ballots, and Georgia's number 1 and Texas is number 2. And this will come out, I think, as we talk about like over and underrated teams. But like ultimately, I think Texas and Georgia are probably not far and away, but I think Texas and Georgia are the 2 best teams. And you can almost look at the like tiers almost in the rankings. It's like Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and then there's like a 500-point gap, and then you get like South Carolina, Florida, Ole Miss, A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and then another kind of gap, and then you get to Auburn. So like I think there's like 3 distinct tiers and the SEC. And if I think about it like that, I think that makes sense. And I think the groupings do make sense. I think the groups that'll probably be the most relevant for the SEC championship are Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU. And I think South Carolina too probably has something to say about that. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. But like, I think you see the top 4 teams based on recruiting rankings, based on talent composites, based on all of those things. I think the tiers that they've got there make sense.
No, I that's the mindset I had for this as well. Like, tiers to me, the teams that I think can definitely win the SEC are Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU. I do think out of that middle tier, there will be a 15 that climbs up, surprises us, and they will be in that conversation at the end of the year. But I completely agree with that. I personally have Alabama number 2. I get this weird feeling with Georgia this year, guys. I don't really love a lot of their positions. Like, every year I look at their position groups and I'm like, damn, I really love that dude. They don't really have that dude right now for me, other than linebackers. I think they're really, really good at the linebacker group. But their defensive line, other than Christian Miller, there's a lot of question marks. Secondary, a lot of question marks. And they weren't even that great last year in the secondary, honestly. Running backs, can Nate Frazier hold on to the football? Because if he can't, they're going to have – it's basically, imagine if Jarrett Gibson was our starter. He has a lot of talent, but he fumbles a lot. That's kind of how I feel like with Nate Frazier. And their offensive line hasn't been great the past couple of years. So personally, I don't have them number 2. But again, if we're tiering this, they're definitely in tier 1.
Yeah, and I think, it's hard for me to say that Georgia shouldn't be there, because by virtue of who Georgia has been in the SEC over the last 7-ish years, right? 10-ish years. I think they deserve that spot. I think they deserve that respect until somebody knocks them off their perch, right? The SEC, I think, will run through Athens until somebody says otherwise. And so having them there makes a lot of sense to me. Kirby Smart is still Kirby Smart, right? They've still got stacks and stacks and stacks of talent. Again, is it going to be... I think we're past probably the era of buzzsaw teams like we've seen. So we're not going to ever see Georgia be that buzzsaw team or Alabama be that buzzsaw team. I think we're just past that era. But ultimately, I think Georgia still has a crap ton of talent there in their rooms. And I think ultimately their coaching staff is really good and has found a way. I mean, last year we said the same thing going into the year, that this wasn't this wasn't Georgia team of 2 or 3 years ago. And they still managed to win the SEC, beat Texas twice. And then they ran into Ohio State in the playoffs. That's another conversation, right? But like, ultimately, having Georgia in the top tier until proven otherwise makes sense to me. And I think the gap being so narrow between them and Texas makes a lot of sense for me as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like I said, in the tier system, they 100% deserve to be in tier 1. So I talked about that one team jumping up from that second tier. I want to get your opinion on that. Who do you think it is and why?
Yeah, I you said who, so I have to pick one. And I think it's honestly Florida's probably my pick for it. I think the 2 things that really give me a good feeling or good vibes from Florida this year, obviously DJ Lagway. I think DJ Lagway is going to be a top 3-ish quarterback in the conference. And Florida's going to have one of the most experienced offensive lines in the country. They returned 4 of 5 guys from last year, 2 of which would have been like top 3 round picks. Like they had a first team All-American comeback. They had like a right tackle comeback that were both draft eligible guys that would have been pretty decently drafted kids. So I think when you have a really good quarterback behind an experienced and pretty solid offensive line, I think they were like number 11 in pass blocking in PFF last year. So like you have a good quarterback behind an experienced offensive line that's proven that they're good. It's going to be an offensive year, I think, in the SEC in a lot of ways. And so that gives me Florida vibes just based on its quarterback-driven offense. You're going to have a good offensive line. I think their skill positions will figure it out because you could put you could put an average quarterback behind a good offensive line with decent skill players and win national championships. Steve Sarkisian did it with Mac Jones, right? So like you could see that ultimately happening at Florida. I wouldn't be shocked if it was South Carolina either for similar reasons. I think Lenore Sellers is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country as well. So if I had to pick one, you told me to pick one, I think Florida's probably my pick.
So up until today, I was aboard that Florida train because of DJ Lagway, but I just got to jump off now because he's already had 2 injuries, and we're not even in fall camp. Like today, he's seen walking around in an ankle boot. Like you can't be injured this much during the offseason. And then when you get into the season, I'm going to expect you not to be injured. I just can't do that. So I'm off, and I'm going to hate saying this, but I have a weird feeling because they're not getting the hype they normally do in the offseason. I think Texas A&M has a real shot to make the SEC championship game this year, and I hate saying that. Obviously, I do not like Texas A&M, but they're not like usually we hear, oh, Texas A&M, Texas A&M. You're not hearing that, and usually when you're not hearing that, that's the year that team jumps up and surprise everyone. That's how life works. So I think it's going to be them. I think Marcel Reed's going to be better this year in the system. I think their defense will always be fine because Mike Elko is a really good defensive head football coach. And their wide receivers are good, like Casey Concepcion from North Carolina State coming over. You have Mario Craver, who I really liked. I actually wanted Tex to pursue him because he played really well in the Mississippi State game when we played him. Him and Kevin Coleman both did. So those 2 really good. And then if you're getting Le'Veon Moss back healthy, I had him as the number 1 ranked running back room in the SEC last year. I think they'd be the number 1 ranked running back in the SEC this year. They're really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, Moss and Ruben Owens coming back from injury as well. Yeah. It's hard to think that their offensive skill is not going to be very good. And again, I've said it. I've gone on record on multiple times saying I would not be shocked if the Texas A&M game was an SEC championship play-in. Like whoever wins that game goes to Atlanta to play for the game. I would not be surprised if that was the case because I think they're both very good teams. Like you said, a Mike Elko defense, you could probably put your mortgage on it being solid, a top 15 defense. And the offense will get better. I think Marcel Reed's ability to process quickly and to make the right reads, I think is still going to be probably not, I don't want to say limiting factor. Like, I don't think he can do it, but like, if he can't do it, that's going to be a limiting factor for them because I think a lot of what Marcel Reed did last year was first read and tuck. And so I think if he can mature, if he's able to become more of a well-rounded passer and less of kind of your traditional scrambling quarterback, I think that's probably going to be, because the guy's got an arm, he's got a freaking cannon. So if he can make the reads and he can put himself in position again, I think offensive line for them is going to be a big question. I don't know what they're going to have with that unit. I think they've had some addition by subtraction with some guys deciding to leave, but ultimately, I think Marcel Reed, part of his running problem last year was the fact that offensive line just wasn't very good. And so if their offensive line can go from bad to good, or at least, slightly average, then I think they could probably take a big step forward. And like I said, I'll say it again, like I would not be shocked if we're looking at that Black Friday game with Texas and Texas A&M being a play-in game for the SEC championship. That would not shock me in the slightest bit.
No, and you kind of gave South Carolina as another one. I think Auburn, if Jackson Arnold's just an average quarterback with the wide receivers they have, I think they have the second best wide receiver core in America behind Ohio State. That's how talented they are with like Eric Singleton, Cam Coleman, and Perry Thompson. Those guys are really, really good, and they have a lot of offensive line returning. And Kendrick Falk is a really, really good defensive player. So it really is. If Jackson Arnold is the guy Oklahoma thought he was last year, Auburn can probably jump into like that 5th spot in the SEC.
And I've said that I don't think Arnold was the issue. I think it was the offensive line. And that's why that The other quarterback was able to play better because he's more of a pure runner than Jackson Arnold. So I don't think Jackson Arnold was the issue in Norman last year. I think you've got to talk about Bill Bedenbaugh, and I've talked about that at length on how I think he had a bigger issue or more to do with OU struggles last year than folks want to give him credit for. But yeah, I think Jackson Arnold, I don't think he is that bad of a quarterback. I think he was put in a bad position. He was expected to carry a team, and that's not really a great spot to be in as a freshman coming in at a place like OU that expects excellence, right? They expect that tradition of excellent quarterback play. So I don't think he was put in a position to be successful, and he wasn't. So like, shocker, a 19-year-old was put behind the 8 ball and wasn't quite the savior to win the SEC in your first year there. I don't think we should be surprised by that at all.
No, I completely agree. So that does it for SEC media poll results.